Good evening and welcome to Livid Comics Lair. Tonight's guest is the COO of Second Sight Publishing. They have a lot of titles out, guys, so we're going to be going really deep tonight and kind of going over everything. A couple of the ones that we really wanted to focus on was Harvest of Horrors, and the other title is Mississippi Zombie. So two out of the many, many titles that they're putting out. So please welcome our friend and special guest, Mr. Marcus Roberts. What's up? Good evening, everybody.
Hey, what's going on?
Good evening, folks.
Here we are once again, wasting somebody's 2 hours worth of their time. One more time. We're doing it again. Awesome. Well, welcome, Marcus, to our show. You're in for some fun here tonight, so we'll just have a good time and hang out. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. I'm hyped to be here. I'm ready to talk some horror comics and just kick it.
Yeah, you're in the right spot. Even John turned down the lights for tonight's show, so it's a good start.
All planned. As Marcus can tell everyone, that's a complete lie. I just didn't want a reflection on my forehead, but yeah. Yeah, no, we're excited. This is a good time of year to have you on too. October, can't really ask for much more. So.
Definitely, it is the month of October is like my Christmas season. I always say 'tis the season. 'Tis the season for some horror. 'Tis the season for something scary, some thrillers.
Yeah.
And with Second Sight Publishing, that's one of the things that we really specialize in is horror. We go through all the horror genres, from the gory to the spooky.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about some of the titles tonight. Joel mentioned a few up front, but there's a few others that definitely piqued my interest. I didn't. So you and I talked a couple months ago, just networking on the side, and that's when I asked you to come on the show. But at that point, that's when I started digging into like the titles you guys have out there, and I was telling Joel like, there's so many like These Damn Kids. Like I had seen that, in a lot of places, but then I'm like, oh crap, that's Second Sight right there. That's awesome. But so I definitely want to talk about that series a little bit tonight too.
Oh, definitely, because that comic should be in stores here in the next couple of weeks. Issue 1 in the next couple of weeks, and then issue 2 a couple of months after that. But that is I'm actually the editor on that book as well. So
nice.
That book, man, I think once fans get in their hands and once they really dive into the book, they're going to really love it. They're going to be surprised, first of all, at just how good the book is, because it is not what you think it is, and yet it's exactly what you think it is.
I mean, I feel like I'm living in that house with my son, so I don't know. I don't know the story, but I got this feeling that he might be a cover boy of one of your future issues.
Well, let's just say after you read that first issue, if your kids call you in the middle of the night, you might want to take a bat in the room with you. just in case, not giving anything away, but just in case, you might want to have that bat, or that now might be the perfect time to pretend to be Captain America and grab that trash can lid for a shield, and then like, hey, honey, did you call me?
Oh man, yeah, I'm all about that. I can't wait to read that. I actually have a question right up front here too. You mentioned that's coming out soon. I feel like a lot of the titles I'm seeing are all about to come out right around the same time. It seems like you guys are about to explode on the scene here with so many titles like right around the same time. How did that all come about? Was that a planned thing to like strategically have them all come out around the same time, or how did that take place?
It actually was a plan, and for new people to Diamond, like we were new to Diamond. But we saw where Diamond would have months that were themed months, whether it be Black history, whether it be women's history, whether it be manga, that they had theme months. So we saw that they had a month that was a horror theme month. So we started making plans like, yeah, if we're going to release some horror titles, we need to release them on the horror theme month. Just let them go. Turn the faucet on and let it go. So even though we teased a couple of horror titles throughout, leading up to that point, which was in July. In July, we said, okay, let's hit them with it. So we hit them. We had 8 books in previews, all horror themed books that ranged from a book like Ironhead by Stefano Cartacelli, which some may not call it horror, but it's about a warrior who fights a 1,000-year war, like everyday fighting. The gore, the graphicness, just imagine fighting for 1,000 years. That thought can be horrific. To something like the collection we did for Jonathan Hedrick. Jonathan Hedrick introduces his Freak Show universe. So we have a collection of his Freak Show horror stories. The Freak Show Freak Show Night, which came out earlier this year, actually. Freak Show Princess, which came out in Mississippi Zombie 2 earlier in the year. And then we have a new story, Freak Show Jester. So that book is Freak Show Kingdom. We actually have a title that I did, which is a collection of stories from Mississippi Zombie called the Horn Island Trilogy. Nice. Of course, we have These Damn Kids. We have a title Arisian, which is another Bradley Golden title. Whereas like These Damn Kids is Bradley's take on Children of the Corn, Arisian is Bradley's take on the old movie It.
Oof. That speaks my language. I've said on the show before that book got me into horror in 8th grade. I shouldn't say got me into horror. I read Goosebumps as a kid, but that's the first adult horror that I read, and that's what did it for me right there. 8th grade. That's when I knew I wanted to write. So you have me intrigued.
Well, the thing about horror is, like when I started collecting comic books, a lot of the comics were still under the thumb of the Comics Code Authority. So they controlled a lot of the content that came out from the publisher whose titles I collected the most, which was Marvel. But then I was turned on to the underground comics scene where I could get a comic book like Eerie that was just unhindered by the Comics Code, very graphic, as gory as they wanted to make it. The stories were always creative and imaginative, but it was like just real horror stuff for me versus the stuff that the major comic book companies were forced to put out because of the Comics Code Authority.
Yeah. That's and now you see even like DC has the Black Label, and like they're all starting to. I think some of them are catching on a bit. They see the interest from these titles that are through IDW or Image or Dark Horse. These companies that are willing to go a little bit darker. We said that
it's real horror fans out there.
Yeah.
Who want the content, and they know the fans want the content because they go to the movies.
Yep.
I mean, why else would 30, 40 years later, Halloween still be kicking it? We're about to bring Michael Myers back out on us for the umpteenth time because the horror fans they like him.
Yep.
So he's always going to be in it, no matter how many like Jason movies you make. Jason is always going to be scary, even though you know what's going to happen when he shows up. Well, there's Jason. Somebody's going to get killed. You still are like, okay, yeah, I gotta watch this.
Yeah, yep. At that point, it's about seeing how creative the kills are, right? It's not you know the plot of the movie pretty much going in. So.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why, like, and kind of giving away my age here, but one of the movies when I was growing up that I really enjoyed was this movie called "I Spit on Your Grave." Not so much a horror, but definitely a killer flick, because homegirl with the knife, the thing she did makes these killers like, whoa. I can see Freddy Krueger like, wow, that was a good idea right there. I got to try that movie. But it was scary. It was scary. It was not the traditional horror like the old Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That was scary. And Leatherface, the first time you saw Leatherface, which we're talking about the 70s, you saw a big ass dude with a leather face on, coming at you with a butcher knife or a chainsaw. That's scary.
Sometimes a bit funny as well.
Well, because
the effects at the time.
Yeah, the effects at the time, but you got to figure also from that point to now, we've had a big desensitization of what we consider to be scary. Like, and I believe that's why you see things get more and more gory, because people are trying to find that old scare that they had before, and that's not where the gore is not where it lies. It's finding what is really scary to people, and then bringing that and some kind of semblance of life. Like it's one thing to have a zombie chasing after you, but it's a whole other thing when you're scavenging for food and you're trying to survive, and you have to deal with zombies. So it's bringing that real life element into things that really make things horrific.
Yeah, it's forcing you to go, because if they were in a warehouse full of food, then that's going to be a boring ass movie, right? It's like, I'm just staying here.
I'll never leave.
But Nightmare on Elm Street gave me nightmares as a kid, and when you think back, Freddy was in the movie for 7 minutes total. I read that stat once, and I'm like, how the hell did he give me so many nightmares if he was only in the movie for 7 minutes? It's just like you said, everyone's so desensitized now. Back in the 80s, that came out, and it was just the whole atmosphere of it. The thought of, if I fall asleep, I'm dead. So,
yeah, exactly. One of the scary movies for me was Phantasm. And I don't know if any of you all have ever seen that movie, but that flying ball, the the long thin man, that stuff was scary. Like I was afraid to go into funeral homes after that, because I was scared that it's gonna be some munchkins coming out of somewhere that's gonna drag me in a coffin to an alternate dimension. Phantasm to me was a scary movie.
I agree.
I had an older brother. He drugged me all through that stuff. So he was 10 years older than me. So I was 7 or 8 watching, Nightmare on Elm Street and, Friday the 13th. And we liked, I like Friday the 13th, the series. It was kind of a fun little show. I'm not sure if you remember that. It was a Canadian show, but that was the Cursed Antique Shop. And that was a good show too. So we were watching that on I think it was Saturday nights at 1 a.m. that would come on. So here I am, 8 years old, trying to stay up till 1 a.m. on Saturday night to catch that stuff. But it was killer. It was super fun. Yep.
Oh yeah.
There's one thing I'm really curious. I know that I heard that you started in comics really late. I'd say you were in your 50s or something, and and I kind of have the same story. I was doing something else, and then something just came to me that just could come back at any time, and then 50 was half century. That's my mark. Now I'm going to do what I love to do. And how did you turn that switch? What made you go into comics? I don't know if you did that for the first time or just came back to it. How was it?
Well, I have been in the comics all my life, and that's not a literal thing. All my life I have been into comics. I am what's referred to as a generational comic reader. My father read comics. His cousins read comics. So comic books have been in my life all my life. And I knew at some point in my life I was going to be doing something in comics. But as life would have it, you know, things happen, life happens, families and whatnot. And I had to do whatever I need to do to survive, I guess you would say. But comics, I never lost the love for comics. But I was going through the web one day and I came upon this website called The World of Black Heroes. And I got into contact with the person who ran it, Ryan Frazier. And Ryan and I hit it off. Ryan and I became very good friends. And he was telling me he was doing this stuff by himself, that every now and then he would get somebody to come in and help. But I started helping him out with that. And that was in like 2012, yeah. So I started with the World of Black Heroes. Then I started writing articles because Ryan was like, look, you know a lot of comic book history, you know a lot about comic books, you know, let's just do more. So I started writing articles about comic books, and then I started interviewing independent comic book creators. And one of the people that I interviewed, he was like, hey, Marcus, if you ever do a comic book, I'll publish it. So after toying with the idea, I said, you know what, I'm going to do this. So I did it. I did the comic book. I went back to the guy, and true to his word, and that guy was Tony Cottrell of Advent Comics. True to his word, he published my book. So I didn't have my first comic book published until I was 53. Wow. That comic book was nominated for a Glyph Comic Award in 2019.
Damn, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, I have but I've always been in the comic books. Always been in the comic books. I went through the period where you know, I was into superheroes when I was younger, but horror has always been my thing. When I got tired of superheroes, it was horror and the Savage Sword of Conan. I think I got from issue maybe 98 to issue 300 and something of the Savage Sword of Conan, because the superhero stories became redundant. Yeah, you can only, once you save the world one time, it doesn't matter how many different ways you do it. It's like you saved the world. So it's hard to be creative, or at that time, because with the Comics Code Authority running things the way they ran things, it was hard to go dark with a superhero. It was hard to be gritty with a superhero. So if you wanted dark and gritty stories, you had to go outside of those major two. You had to go outside of DC or Marvel. And that's how it ended up in the underground line.
There you go. Did you read any of Oh, sorry. I was just gonna point out your shirt there, Joel. Tales from the Crypt. Oh, yeah. Did you get into any of the EC horror stuff, or?
I love the EC horror stuff. I got a big collection of EC horror comics. EC horror of the Carlton comics. Yeah. Tales from the Crypt. The Vault of Fear. The Vault of Horror. Yeah, I love the EC. As a matter of fact, my book, the Horn Island Trilogy, it closely resembles an EC horror type story.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to ask what was some of the like the first titles as a young guy that you picked up, and like what was that experience like? Was it just popped into like a gas station, or what was it like when you went and first bought your first comic as a child? And do you remember what it was?
Well, I was laughing about this the other day. I would get comic books like The Flash and like Spider-Man and Captain America and Superman. I would get those books to trade with this other guy whose brother was older and could actually buy the weird and the creepy and the underground comics. So I would trade all the superhero comic books I could get my hands on to get those books.
That's awesome. Great. That's like the equivalent of I remember when I was a kid buying a ticket to see Toy Story so I could sneak into Deuce Bigelow. Not proud of that.
Exactly. But like I started out reading stuff like the supernatural thrillers line and Dead of Night and the Crypt of Shadows. Those are some of the early horror books from Marvel that I would keep up with. But then like supernatural thrillers, for example, once they introduced the character, the mummy, the living mummy, then the living mummy just kind of took over that title. So there was only like maybe 19 issues of that title done, and the last like 8 or 9, maybe 10 of those issues are all the living mummy. But those first 8 issues were different stories, different settings. I always enjoyed that. I enjoyed the DC comic stuff as well now because I did weird fantasy, I did weird war tales, House of Secrets, House of Mystery.
Nice.
So I read the DC horror stuff too.
Yeah, I was just checking my wall. I have DC Doorway to Nightmare on my wall. That was a Johnny Craig file copy from his collection. Marvel's Uncanny Tales and also Unexpected from DC is on my wall. So I was just checking this.
Hold on. Tower of Shadows.
Wow.
There you go. Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love Silver Age horror, man. It's still reasonable too.
Yeah, this is it. The supernatural thriller is number 1. So, and then got the Crypt of Shadows as well.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so these are all the books from my childhood, so to speak, and just like probably a lot of other comic collectors that are my age, and I'm finding more and more of these stories. A lot of my books were destroyed from either storm or moving or something of that nature, and I find myself now having to recollect those titles.
Yeah,
and it's like I cringe sometimes when I see a title I know I paid 20 cents for when I was a kid, and now they want like $350 for it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, wow, okay. I'll give you 15 cents and you can tear me a corner off.
Yeah, right. It'd be a trip if it was the original one that you own too. Like it came back home. It would be amazing.
Oh, geez, can you imagine that? Yeah.
And you know what? Now, that's funny you would say that. I'd be able to tell if it was one that I owned because as a kid, I couldn't draw. I always had artist envy. So in my comic books, I'd always draw mustaches on the people.
Yeah, sure.
Draw beards and stuff on the people because I couldn't draw. I could only enhance what was already there.
That's a start.
It's a start.
It's all right. Yeah.
And as much as I hate to admit this because it's going to make me sound crazy, but even because of the Comics Code Authority, when they drew the women with the low-cut blouses, they still had nothing in the chest, so I would add the little line to make cleavage there.
Good man.
Because they couldn't do it. The Comics Code Authority wouldn't let them.
People get paid big money to do that now, Marcus. So you might have ahead of your time.
Yeah, hey, Rogeria's been begging us to write a story that has a sexy lead female in it, so we can draw them. So
I just want to show off.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
I don't care about the story as long as I have it right.
No pressure, John. No pressure.
I mean, I can write a shitty story if he wants, but yeah.
He just wants production value.
I don't mind. It's her name there, not mine.
Well, as long as it's a horror story, because that way, people can be titillized by looking at the sexy women until they get killed.
Oh, that's terrible. I wouldn't buy that one.
Oh man.
But Marcus, you're originally from was it Savannah, Georgia, or you just have family up in Savannah?
Well, I'm originally from Georgia. It's a little small town called Sylvania.
Okay.
The town is so small, like you got traffic light coming in and the traffic light going out, and they kind of blink at the same time because they're so close by each other.
Gotcha.
Well, but I'm originally from a small town, and it's actually my small town my small town origins that gave me the fertile mind to write horror.
Well, that was my thought. That was my thought. Yeah.
On my street growing up, there are 2 funeral homes, 2 churches, 2 graveyards. In the county that I'm from, there's a story called of the Goodall House. And I don't know if any of you all are familiar with it, but the county is Scriven County there in Georgia. And with the Goodall House, the way the story goes, there was a town that was situated there. And there was a minister that came to town, and the people ran the minister out of town. And the minister crossed this bridge, and he wiped the dust from the town off his feet and cursed the town. The Goodall family took him in and let him spend the night. So to this day, there is no trace of the town. The riverbed even dried up. You cannot find a brick, a nail, a piece of glass, anything from that town. But the Goodall House is still standing.
Wow. That's awesome. I love stories like that. There's so many weird things. And yeah, I've had a propensity for like weird death. Like I owned a former funeral home for a period of time for about 7 years. I moved to this house last year, and there's a cemetery on our property, like an old family plot. So it's not by design and it's not intention, but for some reason, somehow, like death is following me and what I'm attracted to in terms of my property purchases for some reason. So,
well,
hey,
something else too about the graveyards. Now, when I was a kid, I definitely was afraid to even go in my backyard at night because those graveyards were down the street. But my godmother, actually, she would say, you know, why be afraid? Because everybody in there is dead.
That's right. Yeah. The dad joke was, you know, why do they put fences around cemeteries? Because people are dying to get in. Right? That was the dad joke.
I'll have to use that on my son. I forgot about that one.
Oh, it's so bad. It's good though.
I did not know that one.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I think there is something about, you know, to your point, and that's the reason why I asked, like, where you were upbringing. Is there something about those small towns where there's always local folklore and people have these stories like you shared with us, and you know, it kind of leads to that natural outcome. I think your mind starts to wander, and there's gossip about your neighbors and these stories and things that get handed down, and it kind of just naturally percolates and feeds itself for a story. I don't know if John felt that way. He grew up in kind of a smaller town up north.
Oh yeah,
here, but I don't know if that's a fuel for you too. But I wonder if that's an underlying theme with a lot of writers. I mean, even you think about like Stephen King living up in a small town in Maine, and it's these little tiny microcosms that kind of create this sense of anxiety, and I guess leads to horror. So it's very interesting to think about that.
Well, think about Stephen King's books too, right? Like how many of them take place in a city? I probably couldn't count them. I could count it on one hand. You know, it's all small towns, and you know, because like you said, it's the town gossip. It's the characters all knowing each other. There's always some bad seed in the town, and
then when you think about a small town in relation to a big town, in a small town, the story doesn't vary. The people who live on this side of town, on, you know, this side of the track, tell the same story as the people on the other side of the track, because the town is small. So it's like population 500, all 500 or at least 450 of them experience this together. And so there's no variation in the story as you go from neighbor to neighbor, from store to store. And that makes things even more spooky. It's one thing if you heard a story and 5 different variations of the story, then you can call bullshit on it. But if you hear the story from 5 different people and it's the same story, and these are different people, then you kind of feel like it must be some truth to this because they all are telling me the same thing.
Yeah. We actually, I'm from a town called Newport, New Hampshire. I think we had like 3,000 people or something like that, maybe 5 tops. I can't remember. But there's an episode of Unsolved Mysteries on my town Season 4, episode 4, I'm pretty sure is the episode, but there was that was like a big deal, you know. I watched that episode so many times, but there was a serial killer before I was born who killed some like nurses and people in the surrounding towns, and he never got caught. And then there was a 2-parter too. I'm like, wow, my town has 2 stories. Ruggiero was like, I'm glad you got out of that town. Like, yeah, it's one of the judges in our town went missing, and they never figured out what happened. So it just goes to tell you, you know, a small town can have some pretty damn creepy stories. And like you said, it's just everyone knows everyone. It's the same story, and it's just I don't know. There's just something to it, but
yeah, and the small towns always have the haunted house, right? You never hear of like a haunted house in downtown Manhattan, right? There's that big city like, you know, Chicago or anything, right? So it has to be a small town where you can have a haunted house. It just doesn't exist in a major metropolis, right? You could have that old freaky building that just has stories to tell looking at it from the outside. It's part of that environment too.
Newport Nurse Killer. So we called him the Kellyville Killer, and then I think he was also called the Green River Killer. I think I remember the third name, but yeah,
you gotta have 3 names.
Yeah,
can't be,
yeah.
It's like you know, assassins have 3 names. You can't have 2 names. You know, Lee Harvey Oswald, John Wilkes Booth. You know, if you kill somebody, you get 3 names. If you make an attempt, it's 2 names. So,
speaking of serial killers, though, did you guys see today the Zodiac Killer? They named who apparently it was.
Was it Ted Cruz? Was it? Was it one of those guys who looks like him? Right. That's what they're saying.
I'm not gonna go there. But yeah.
No, not getting political. He just kind of looks like him. I just kind of like the guy.
I forget the guy's name, but no, they said they named who it was, and he's already dead, and so.
Now they're going to get a letter in code again. It's going to blow their mind, right?
All right. So, sorry, guys. I'm going on a tangent now here.
All right, here he goes. Buckle up, Marcus. It's coming.
Yeah, that's me.
I'm ready for it.
You saw it coming. We do comics, you know, on Livid Comics. Like we do comics for the purpose of entertainment. And, you know, for the sake of the comics itself, for the art, for the love that we have for it. But you do something different because, like, you work on Black comics there in USA. And we know the history. You know what, you know, African-American still, to this day, are going through. And you know that when you do Black comics, you are doing politics. You are meddling with social stuff. You're talking about things that are important to the Black community there. When I say Black community, I spread it to the Mexican community, the Haitians, you know, all people that come from overseas and are there, and they don't feel empowered. And when you are into Black comics, can you tell the difference between the indie but the common indie and the indie Black comics? Or am I completely mistaken here? I don't know. Enlighten me, please.
Okay. There are schools of thought, we'll call them, wherein you label a comic book a Black comic. But what is a Black comic? There are other schools of thought that say there are comic book creators who write Afrocentric material. They don't want to have that Black comic label. But then there are people like me that just say comics. I am a Black person and I write comics. I write horror. I'm not a political person, so I don't write about politics. You have some people who are comic creators who are political. So their comic books have that political tone. That's not me. You have some people who, and this is not just in the Black community. It's not just in the white community. It's not just in the Asian or in the Latino community. You have people who they feel a certain way. They have certain thoughts. They have certain feelings, whether they're political, whether they are societal, whether they're psychological even. And comics is the vehicle that they use to express themselves, to express these thoughts, to express their social theories, to express what they are feeling. And comics has that ability. So what happens is, in my mind, if you got 100 people out there that's making comic books, then you can choose which genre, which style, which type of comic book that you want. If you aren't a person who is into what they call the social justice warriors, which is borderline derogative term, but if you aren't into those type of books, don't get them. I mean, there's so much other stuff out there. When it comes to the Black comic book community specifically, though, I always point out that for the very first comic book, the very first thing that they patched together and sewn the binding together was a collection of Mandrake the Magician comic book strips. And Mandrake the Magician's assistant is Lothar. Lothar, the African prince. Lothar, to me, was your first superhero in that. When you look at his description, he was impervious to man-made weapons and he was super strong. So you think about some heroes who came after that in comic books, and you see where Lothar could have been the first. But that just goes, I use that to say Blacks have been in comic books since the very beginning, since the very first comic book. Our presences have been here. There are comic book companies such as Best Comics. They had a Black character on the cover of their comic books in 1942.
Wow.
One of the top artists in the 40s was a Black artist named Matt Baker. He was the artist for Phantom Lady and Canteen Kate. He was so good. He was called the master of the feminine form. So you know that. He also had a character that called Vuda, that was a Black character, and this was in the 40s. This guy, his first solo project was considered the first graphic novel, the first trade paperback, and it's called It Rhymes with Lust. So, you know, Blacks have been in comics for generations, for years, decades. So, you know, you get somebody like me coming along, knowing that history and actually spreading that history around, it kind of eliminates those labels that we tend to use, a Black comic book creator, a white comic book creator, because we're all comic book creators. Yeah. I would hate to think that this material that I'm writing for everyone that loves comics is only limited to a certain group of people because of the label that is placed upon me. It's like, I'm a Black comic book creator. So does that mean white people can't read my stuff? Does that mean I can't get some Latino fans of my stuff? You know, the whole labeling thing is limiting. So
yeah. Oh, that's perfectly said. That's awesome. I think a lot of people can learn from.
It's like you're taking an Uber and then you ask for the color of the car. You know, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I just take from point A to point B. You know, and if your story is good, doesn't matter. That's my opinion.
That's right. And that's another reason why I like horror. And I said this before. Horror is not gender specific. It doesn't care about ethnicity. It doesn't care about your social status. It doesn't care. A killer is going to kill you. He's not going to say, "Oh, I'm not going to kill you today because you're poor," or "Hey, I like your shoes, so you get a pass." Nope, you're going to get killed just like everybody else. Now, as a comic book creator or as a writer, I might say, well, I'm going to have a character that wakes up one day and say, okay, today I'm going to kill everybody whose name starts with J and they went to a certain school. So I kill all these people, and then I wake up the next day. Okay, well now I think I'm gonna kill all Asian people. So now, but that's specific, and that comes from my imagination, my creativity. But in real life, a killer is like, okay, I'm gonna kill somebody. And if I'm the unfortunate person who happened to be walking by, I ain't gonna say, okay, I'm not gonna kill the black guy because I'm looking for the white guy. No, he's gonna kill the black guy and the white guy.
Right.
I don't know.
everybody-
Maybe he wants everybody one from each color.
He's gonna kill the dog. He's gonna even stab the doll babies just because he think they might be Chucky and gonna come alive. He's gonna kill because that's what he does. He kills.
Yeah, everybody's scared, right? No matter, everyone's got fears and things that they get scared of. So to your point, horror is universal, right? So there's not anybody out there, no matter how hardcore you are, that's not scared of something. There's got to be something that gets at you at some point, right? So gotta find
exactly. I would I'll put it like this. I would not dismiss a horror writer because of his color. If I got a comedian writing horror, I might dismiss that because I don't think he's deep enough. But I'm not gonna say, oh, that guy's white, he can't write horror, because it's just not true. I'm like, or that black guy, he doesn't write horror, or the horror I'm gonna get it's gonna be all about slavery. No. Let's just dispel that right now, because the person who thinks that way has limited themselves from getting material that could possibly be some of the best stuff they've ever written.
Yeah.
So,
in a sense, did you mean that writing horror is harder than writing comedy, for instance?
I think they're both hard because some people aren't funny and some people are. So, I'm a funny person. I'm a funny person because I enjoy life. That doesn't mean I can't write horror, but I can't write comedy.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a comedian. I may be a funny person, but I'm not a comedian. So, like, I can't make up jokes, but I can make up some horror tales that will make the hair stand up on the back of your neck, because that's me. So I think a person who's gifted with comedy, a person who's gifted in writing romance, because you just can't throw a writer in there to write a romance story. And I know John can attest to this himself. Like, it's a challenge trying to make it authentic, trying to make it something that flows, that feels real when you read it. And a true romance person, when they read such a story, they know if this is something that is like a technical person put this together because they know these elements belong in this story. Or if this is something that has flowing naturally from the writer himself.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even like, I love a good comedy movie, but when I like writing scripts for like our comics, like, outside of like a funny line here and there, like, you're not gonna be cracking up if the comics I'm writing. It's just not my style. I can't.
Exactly.
But I agree. Horror just feels like I could think up a million things in my head to write that would be scary, at least to someone. But yeah, I don't know. I've tried to write comedy in some of my scripts too, and then I'll read it back and I'm like, that sounds so stupid. Like, that's we're gonna change that.
Yeah. The thing is, like, it's very hard to write a genre that doesn't have a punchline. Like, it relies on your imagination more than anything else, because the horror is mostly in people's head. What you don't see, what scares you the most. And in comedy, is completely different. Is another pathway, I believe.
Yeah, and it is the timing thing with comedy as well. It's like delivering the joke on time, delivering the punchline, the whole delivery thing. I have a friend from college who's a comedian, and I know when I met her way back in the 80s, she was funny. So to see where she is now in her career, she's big time. But she's been a funny person since I've known her. It's like it's a natural gift. And that's a gift that I don't have. Like I said, I might be funny. I might be able to crack a joke. You know what I mean? But as far as just being a comedian, being able to have that delivery, being able to come up with that material that is funny to other people. Because sometimes I crack myself up and I'm the only one laughing in the room.
Oh man, yeah. I have the tendency to my wife will call me out on it all the time, where I'll tell a joke, she doesn't laugh, and I'm like explaining the joke to her after, and she's like, "No, it just wasn't funny." Okay.
That's humiliating.
You could write a comedy horror like Llamageddon or Alpacalypse, right? You could do something like that, right?
I could only stand 10 minutes of that.
Now, I have seen some of the funniest horror stuff, and it's intentional.
Right.
The writers are going for funny in their horror, and I mean it's fun, and at the same time, it's like it's not that real serious horror,
Right.
but still it's good. It's funny, and I'm envious because like I can't do that. I can't make a funny horror comic book.
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen. I could kill a couple of comedians in there, but I can't make a funny.
I guess it goes back to like if you think it's like popcorn horror, right? Like it's like the jump scares, and like there's the funny guy that's gonna get killed off. Like that's like its own type of horror. But then when you if you watch like Midnight Mass, for example, the show that just came on Netflix, there's not a joke in that show, and it's freaking dark, and which I highly recommend, by the way, to anybody that hasn't seen it. But it's just, to me, that's horror. Like I could see the how that would scare a lot of people. But
well, it's funny. You think about the Scooby-Doo cartoon. Like this was supposed to be the murder mysteries. Like Scooby-Doo is supposed to be scary, but it's funny because it's Scooby. And the gang gets in all these, they go in they fall in these traps, and they get in all these situations that seem serious, and yet it's funny because of some comedic timing that is inserted in by the writers and creators, and that's an admirable skill to me because I can't do that. If I were writing Scooby-Doo, Scooby would be more like a werewolf, and you know what I mean? It would be some serious killing going on.
You would be taking a mask off to reveal the manager of the store is the one that's stealing his food or something,
Yeah,
it wouldn't be a mask. I'm talking straight leather face. They're wearing the face of the person that they just killed.
That's not supposed to be scary, like if it's predictable, can't be scary at the same time. And like everybody knows who's the guilty guy at the end. So
hey, depends on the age, man. Like my someone who was a little younger, like he got a little spooked by some of the monsters on the newer Scooby-Doo. I mean, looking back at some of the ones from the older shows, it's not quite as scary, but they definitely went over the top a bit on some of the creatures on the newer Scooby-Doo. So
and then you got to think about a book series like Goosebumps, like you mentioned before. I mean, to adults, Goosebumps was not that scary, but to the age group that the books were targeted for, some of these kids, they were putting this book down because they were scared to finish it because they got to go to bed at night. Yeah. And now they're scared that something's going to get them in their sleep. So it was effective for the age group that was targeted for.
Yeah.
And really, I think that's the thing that with Scooby-Doo it's a cartoon, and it's targeted for a very young age group. So the things, the situations, and the scenarios that the gang goes through for that particular age group is scary. Where for us, it's just funny.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that about Goosebumps, because as a kid, it didn't necessarily terrify me, but it kept me on my edge. Like, I remember reading The Haunted Mask, and that book scared the crap out of me, thinking I could put a Halloween mask on and it would stick to my face. And like now, I'm reading them to my son now, and as I'm reading them, I'm just rolling my eyes. I'm like, who am I to tell R.L. Stein how to write horror? He's a freaking multimillionaire. But I'm sitting there reading it, and it's like every single chapter ends in a corny, suspense. It's like a cliffhanger, but it's not. You turn the page and it's like, oh, it was just my friend tapping me on the shoulder. It wasn't a monster. And it's like every single chapter ends that way. And it's just, but as a kid, you're like, oh, what's gonna happen? Flipping the page. But
well, for me, I think about an old show that I used to watch, Kolchak, The Night Stalker. That was one of my favorite shows, in that Kolchak used to come across some of the scariest, weirdest stuff to be a reporter. And then, like, you would sit there and wonder, like, is that really possible? Is it real? Did this just really happen? Because you were always left wondering, did this happen? Did he just go through this? And it always made you scratch your head there at the end, like, could it be possible? Did he actually see a guy that changed from a vampire to a human? Or, as they suggested, it was the lighting and the after effects. So that Kolchak was scary in that way, that it almost made the things real. It almost made things plausible. Like, could this really happen? And I enjoyed that. That was one of the reasons why I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that just remind me of the Michael Jackson breakthrough was the Thriller record.
really,
After that, he just skyrocketed because he discovered, or his team discovered, that horror is the best media to go popular. And I had seen an uprising in horror. Maybe it's just the algorithms, I don't know. But I've been bombarded by so many titles, and it's like a second wave, maybe the third wave, but it's a big wave coming of horror writers, horror authors, movies, series, comics, so many things, and some of them are really good. And do you think it's another upheaval, taking over, or is just the algorithms choosing it for us?
oh, it just happened.
I actually believe that it is another upheaval that's coming, because when you look historically at the titles that always stayed in the top 4 or 5, horror, once the horror genre really hit and I mean really became accepted, it always stayed there in the top 4 or 5, except there in the 80s, there were, I guess you could call it a transitional period, because the underground comics market had started drying up. Folks, the CCA, the Comics Code Authority, was all but gone and had loosened their reign on the creators of the companies. So now the companies could do more as far as being dark. But yet, Marvel still had titles like Werewolf by Night out there. They still had Morbius out there. Blade was still running wild. So during the 80s, you had maybe a lull. But then mentioning Blade again, you got Blade on the screen. Mm-hmm. And Blade was, I'm not going to go into what saved the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't care. Blade was like on the screen like this vampire. Even though you knew he came from this superhero company from Marvel, you got this larger-than-life vampire that's actually killing vampires, people are getting bitten. And Blade was actually pretty gory,
Yeah.
and it actually was kind of scary, and it reignited all the horror fans to, like, the big screen. Like, let's go. Let's see more of this. The Walking Dead on television, you cannot deny the effect that that show had on reigniting horror fans. And it was so big until they came out with the Fear of the Walking Dead. But it just, the horror fans have always been there, because you've always had, how many versions of Resident Evil were there? You know what I mean? So the horror fans had always been there. It's just, they were right there under the surface. But it took a couple of real blockbuster movies to make people realize that, hey, horror really does have its place, not just on the screen, not just on bookshelves, but me as a horror fan, there's other people out there like me. That's why the end of this month, we're scheduled to appear at the Spooky Empire Comic Convention in Orlando. This is a huge horror comic convention because horror fans are loyal. I mean, they are. I love you all, horror fans. You all are loyal. That's why we try to turn out the best horror stuff that we can, because they support. They buy the books. They come out to the shows and they support the creators. So it's a little horror fan of everyone, and being able to go to a show like Spooky Empire, you can let your horror flag fly.
Yeah. If they get them, they are yours forever. That's fantastic.
This is one of the covers that's exclusive for this, right? Am I correct?
Yes, you're correct. That's the Harvest of Horror 2. The thing about Harvest of Horrors 2, the second issue, it's been for 5 weeks now in the top 100 graphic novels on Amazon Canada. For Amazon here in the United States, it got as high as number 37 in the top 100, and it's sitting at number 67 now.
Yeah.
Who's the artist on that?
The cover artist is Stefano Cartacelli.
Now, this is exclusive for that event, though, right? Because then the original cover is I just had it pulled up here. I have to stop sharing this screen. But yeah, sorry, you can keep talking there.
Yeah, that's the exclusive for Spooky Empire. The original cover was done by Dan Gorman, and it's old school painted cover. And it is Dan Gorman, one of the best cover artists out there, very underrated. But I mean, fans just went crazy about this cover. They went crazy about this cover.
Yeah.
That's very
I saw the cover and I'm like, I was hooked. Yeah.
I'm still going crazy.
I'm sold.
I couldn't wait to show this one off. I mean, really, when he sent me the first sketches of it, I was like, wow, man. Wow. And then when once it got dressed and everything, and just to see it, it was like, wow, man, this cover is awesome. And I tell you what, when I had one of the books at a con with me, it was funny how many women actually were attracted to this cover. The ladies were like, hey, I want to get this book. I love this cover.
Yeah, that's
it
wild.
Reminds me of like some old Jack Davis kind of looking art, and to a degree, right? It's got that kind of old schooly feel a little bit to it, but at the same time, it's modern. It transcends really well.
Yeah, and as I said, me personally, I like the older style EC Comics stories, and Dan Gorman does the stories for me. Dan Gorman is my artist on the stories, and he actually has a story in this issue that he did. So Dan is a top-notch horror artist, cover artist. We have a couple other covers that he did for me an exclusive cover for the Horn Island Trilogy, which was another painted cover, homage cover for, I think the name of that title was Beware, which is a title from one of the old Marvel titles. That might have been an old Charlton Comics title, Beware. I see you looking, Joel. You see it up there on your wall?
Yeah, I'm looking at my wall. See it at my wall. It's not Vault of Evil. It's not. It's not witches. I'm trying to go through.
No, and Beware, and that might have even been a DC comic, because there was a point where the horror comics from not just the major companies, from every company. I mean, Dell was putting out horror comics. Dell actually was able to get around the Comics Code Authority because the comic books that they were putting out were based on the horror movies at the time. So Dell put out The Creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein, Dracula. You know, those they were able to get around the Comics Code Authority because those comics specifically were based on the horror movies, the old horror movies.
And,
But
those are all public domain, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, they sure are.
but people are tired of them. Nobody can stand anymore a new Frankenstein.
I wanted to pull this one up too, because this was another one that you had shared with us.
Yeah, this actually is going to be an exclusive cover for Mississippi Zombie 2. We're going to have a con edition of Mississippi Zombie 2. And this is a homage cover from, I forgot the title now. I think we got this one from the Black Cat Mysteries. Might have been Tales from the Zombies, I think it was.
Okay. Yeah.
But I for the last, I guess I'm going on 50 days now in my story there on Facebook. I've been putting all these old horror comic covers that I have. I got a big collection of covers. I think it might be over 100 covers I have collected. Wow. So I've been sharing them in my stories since like the beginning of August.
You know what just came out, Marcus? That just came out was the IDW EC Comics cover collection in the artist edition. It's like a tome. The book is like 3 feet by 2 feet. It just came out with a covers edition. Yeah, that came out yesterday. So that's on my radar. So that might be my birthday present to myself, is grabbing that thing. So. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and you know, as I was saying, you know, horror fans are loyal, and something like that they're going to clamor for because of just what it represents. Because the covers, man, that's actually, for anybody out there who didn't know, the secret to selling your horror comic book is to come up with an awesome cover. So you know, when you go through that, like you turn to your wall and look on your wall, Joel. When you go, we signed Sam McCandless and his title, Creepy and Crawly. And Sam is a big horror comic books collector. So when I talk with Sam, he'll look at my stories and he'll be like, okay, I got that comic. And he'll send me a picture of the comic on his wall. Or he'll take pictures of sections of his walls of all these horror comic books that he has. And it's the covers, man. The covers are the head turners. Some of the books from the Underground Comics era. The books themselves were written by people. The Haunt of Fear.
That's the greatest horror cover ever in the history of horror covers. The Graham Ghastly Ingalls, Haunt of Fear 17, buddy. That one is off the charts, and that's an incredible cover. I wish that's the one. If somebody asked me, what one do you wish you had drawn? That's the one.
That's the one there, huh?
That's the one.
That's a catcher.
That's right. That's my first one. I get to look at that every day while I'm in here working. So that's my roommate. Keeps me company.
Inspiration.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. That stuff's killer. That's
Yeah.
fire. But it's amazing that on those, the old EC covers that the Gaines family saved all the original art from 60, 70 years ago, and that they're able to put together, a few 100-page book of it. I mean, none of that stuff got thrown out. No one was like, this is trash, throw it in the dumpster. It's perfect. It's the original artist boards and reproduction in full size. If people aren't familiar with that, I mean, check that thing out. It's just incredible. I mean, they could open a museum with all that stuff, and they have that right through all their artists. They got it. You can get Johnny Craig. You can get Jim Davis, Jack Davis. Sorry, all those guys. You can get all that stuff in that full collection. It's incredible that they have all that stuff still together. So amazing.
That is. Well,
Yeah.
modern artists, writers even, they owe a horror comic a big debt of gratitude. The very first comic where artist's name appears on the cover was a horror comic. Midnight Tales #1. The cover artist was Wayne Howard, and he also did the interiors. He did the layouts. He did so much in the comic book that the president of Carlton Comics said his name is going on the cover. And and they asked him, why did you put his name on the cover? He said, look, the guy did the cover. He did all the interior pages. He did the letters. He did the colors. He did everything in the book. His name belongs on it. Very first creator whose name went on the book, Midnight Tales #1. From that point, and that was like 1975. So from that point on, now you start seeing creators or artists being credited for the work that they did on the books.
It took 30 years to see the artists on the cover.
Wow.
For so long, we could only discover if we just go through the pages and check the credits, because I don't remember in the 90s, even the early 20s, any artist on the cover. I wouldn't see that.
Even with the old books that I collect, you don't see the name of the artist or even the writer on the cover of the book. But like I said, it was that horror comic, that Midnight Tales #1 by Carlton Comics, where the president of the company himself said, this dude did everything on this book. His name belongs on the cover.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that story. So that's maybe these guys did, since they're the artist stuff. Okay.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of the Wally Wood cover that just sold for $860,000 at auction too. And of course, he never saw that money when he was alive. They got paid $15 to draw that, but it just sold at auction for $860,000.
Wow, that's crazy.
Right.
But during that time, and especially, I keep referring back to the underground comic movement, but during that time, there were comic book shops that would act as publishers to help these artists and these writers get their stuff out, get their material out. And you had people that were publishing books out of their basement. And when I'm talking about something figurative or literal, these guys were publishing these books because they would sit there and work on them all weekend, then send them off to a printer and have the printer print them off, and then they ship these copies out. So you were getting a lot of raw material, a lot of stuff that wasn't as polished as what you might get from a company like Marvel or DC. But still, it was good stuff. It was true. It was truly independent. And it was the beginnings of a strong independent community, that underground comic movement.
Yeah, it reminds me like the old. I was in a band, like metal bands back in the '90s, and we used to just put together the old fanzines like that, where it's just Xerox copies, stapled together, put it out there at shows. If you could get $1 a copy, man, you were doing well. So usually it was just to leave them on the table and hope somebody takes them away. So at the end of the show, you're packing up and leave it there. So. Yeah, that was awesome. Who did that was New England Comics did that up here. They were a comic shop, and then they helped put out obviously the Tick with Ben Enlund, right? And so that became a big thing for them too. But he was doing their newsletter, and the Tick was a character that just showed up in their newsletter to promote what the store was doing. Then it became a strip. Now it became the big popular thing that we know. So
So wild. There's still a store, right? Isn't that what Ian said? Like there's still
there's
a
a few of
different
them.
comic store. Yeah.
Four of them I think left in the Massachusetts area. So there's 4 New England comics that are around. They're still going. So it's good. It's good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yep. I love that stuff. I love the handmade stuff where they're cutting out almost like a serial killer letter with like the paste ups and things. Like, it looks like something they're sending a ransom letter. It looks great.
Well, the funny story, when Second Sight Publishing started, we started at Second Sight Studios with Bradley Golden. The very first comic book that Second Sight Studios did was a Mississippi Zombie that Bradley put together in his mother's basement, ran off the copies, stapled them all together, cut the pages into the right size, and then went to a con like that weekend and sold books.
It's the way to do it, man. It's grassroots, and there's something really kind of romantic about that. We're spoiled nowadays where we can come out with digital press and have beautiful, nice, crisp comics and things. And I'm old enough that I can still. I personally have run an offset press in my day, so with the 4-color separations and doing plates and emulsions and things, I've done all that. So I can respect, going all the way back to those days too. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, it definitely gives a whole new meaning to the word grind, or when you're saying these guys are grinding. When you got to sit there and cut out your comic book, you know what I mean? You got to staple your book together, line everything up. That is the grind.
Even if you don't have a pass to con and you're selling it out of the trunk of your car, you're trying to get a parking spot near the door. You can't pay enough money to get in the con, and you're trying to sell it out the back of your car. That's a power move too.
Well, now I have done that. I, as a matter of fact, I still do that. But when I published my first book, even though I published through Advent, I still needed to sell my book. So I would ride around with copies of my book in the car. I'd go in the convenience store and buy a Coke and sell a copy to the clerk and anybody who's in the store. I even went to church and like, hey, I love Jesus too. Come buy my comic book. I mean, there's a rapper, Too Short. Too Short, before he became big, he was already big as an independent, because that's what he would do. He would sell his stuff out of the trunk of his car.
Oh, yeah.
He'd pull up at the park and yo, man, I got my music here, and people would come and buy it. So he had a huge following even before he signed on the major distribution. So, taking a cue from that, I would get out there and hustle my comic books. I'd get out there and grind it out because they weren't going to sell themselves. I hadn't got that popular yet. And, Advent was doing good as far as helping with the distribution, but even still, that was limited. We weren't doing it worldwide. So I had to get out there and do it myself, which isn't the problem. It definitely gives you a lot more respect for all the effort that is put into the book, not just the writing, not just the drawing, but even the business end of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the business end. You guys have a lot of titles out and going. Like, how do you end up? What's a successful way that you found to help manage all of that stuff that's going on out there and keep track of everything?
That's Bradley and I. What has happened is I have almost made a full transition from writer, creator to businessman. I'm about to go corporate on y'all. It's like
no worries.
because the fact of the matter is, as a company, we represent independent comic book creators, and the reason that we do have a lot of titles is because these are individuals who are looking for someone that's fair, that's going to help them go to the next level, and that can handle business for them, because the fact of the matter is 70 to 80% of comic book creators aren't businessmen. Mm-hmm. You have a lot who are business savvy, and you can see the ones that are, but the majority aren't. Not to take anything away from Rodrigo as an artist, but does Rodrigo know how to write contracts? Does Rodrigo know how to do all? No, Rodrigo is the artist, so he needs someone who knows about contracts. He needs someone who knows about the distribution. He needs someone who can handle the printing and who can handle the promotion and marketing, so he can focus on what he does best, art. So that's what happens, and that's what's happening with us as a company and representing these independent creators. We're just essentially taking over the business part of the comic book creation process. And that gives them more time to focus on the production part, on writing good scripts, on doing great sequential art for the books. They don't have to worry about their distribution network because I've taken the worry from them from that. And now I worry about it. And I'm like, but at the same time, I am built for that. I'm built to handle that worry. I am a businessman. I before I started doing comic books, like I said, I published my first comic book at 53. I got 3 decades of business experience. So, I'm not walking in the door not knowing business and still trying to do a comic book. I knew the business before I did the first comic book.
I think that's really important.
The commercial side is one of the most important because, like, you have to pay the bills at the end of the day. So if you don't know how to make business, so don't even get into that.
Exactly.
Speaking
and
of
we're seeing this. We're actually seeing this because as a publisher and as a comic book creator, wearing a dual hat, it's like the term work for hire. As a publisher, I love it. As a creator, not so much. And because you have more and more business savvy people they're understanding terms like that. They understand exactly what it means by work for hire, and they see the effects that have happened to people because it's happening now who sign these work for hire deals, and that their creations blowing up on movie screens, the creations selling millions of dollars, and they were stuck with that $150 check they got paid to do it.
Yeah, that was one of the things that John and I talked about early on was that whoever we bring into a project maybe would have a stake. That would be something they'd have to sign up for, right? And say, do you have something in perpetuity where you get a royalty or something on the part of the IP for helping create it, right? Do you just take the $150 page rate, or do you take a $75 page rate, but you get 10% of the pot forever, right? So
exactly,
that's something that's got to be weighed out. So people get short-sighted on that stuff, but then there's also the financial need. They got to pay their bills now, right? So that happens, and they settle when they miss the big prize at the end. So that happens too.
I want the big prize later on.
He wants the big prize. He wants a yacht. He talks to us offline. He wants a yacht. This is what we got to work with, Marcus. It's a.
Ruggiero fully admits he's a sellout. He would sell out in a second if he could. So
I'm really greedy. I'm greedy.
There's nothing wrong with it. At least you know. At least you know.
At least they know.
At least they know. But we're seeing more and more business savvy people.
Well, we got him fooled, don't we, John? We got Ruggiero totally snowballed, don't we?
and it's important because not every company, not every publisher that you deal with goes into it looking fairly. Some people do have predatory practices. Some publishers will take advantage of creators who just don't know. And before you know it, you've signed over your creation and the rights to it for perpetuity. Like, wow, I didn't even know what perpetuity meant. Like, okay, so you should have, you get those situations. So as we're able to do what we're doing because one, we're fair. The people who founded this company, the people who run this company, we're independent comic book creators ourselves. We know what it means, what it takes to get a comic book going. We know the sacrifice. we know how people feel about this book or this character that they've created. This is their baby. You know what I mean? We understand that. We have signed bad contracts. We've been taken advantage of. You know, we've been shortchanged. We've been robbed. We've experienced this. So because as independent comic book creators, we have experienced this, we knew and know how to build the business model where that doesn't happen to anybody else.
Yeah. That's
what do you
great.
think? Yeah, what do you think some of the common mistakes that you see people making that come to you? That, you know, is there a theme and help that they need, or is there something that you say like, make sure you do this before you do that? What's something that stands out to you when they approach you with that, when that need of help?
The biggest thing is they don't understand distribution. Distribution is the lifeblood of your comic. Because if it's not being distributed, if it's not moving, if it's stagnant, it's not selling, you're not making money. So your book has to sell. Some people will sign with a publisher because the publisher has a cool name or they're popular on social media. But then once the publisher gets your book, all your book does is sit on their website because the publisher has no true distribution. They have no way of getting that book into other people's hands other than the people coming to the website to purchase it. And then oftentimes these guys, they don't do anything to drive traffic to the website so people can actually see the book. So now, yeah, you signed with this publisher here, but you don't have any distribution, so your book isn't selling. And people don't really understand the distribution aspect of it. And distribution is important because that's how you get your book out. And I encourage people, because you don't have to sign with me, but sign with somebody who has distribution, who has true distribution. Not that's going to get your book and they're going to put it up there on their website, and then they'll talk about it after they talk about everything else and still don't do anything to drive the traffic to the website in order to get people to at least purchase the book. And then they'll have a plan to distribute the book into retail shops, into these other markets. Canada, for example, I love all our Canadian fans. We have a huge following up there, and we're glad that our books are able to get there. That's distribution. We wouldn't have that big following there if our books didn't have distribution. They just sat on the website, you know, maybe one or two people, maybe one or two of the provinces, but because of the distribution, the whole of Canada. So distribution, got to learn about distribution. If you don't know anything about distribution, then you are actually behind, because you can make 1 million books, but what are you going to do with them?
Yep.
Or you can make one.
Yeah, burn them for warmth.
Okay. Turn them back in because we need the paper. But
right.
but other than that, it's like you can have 2 titles, but have distribution. Those titles are going out to retailers all across the country and different, you know, just going out. And that book will sell. It'll sell a lot more copies than just sitting on somebody's website.
What do you feel that the reception has been overall for like local comic book shops taking in indie titles and things like that? Are there some that are hard and steadfast against it? Are the majority open to that? Are you seeing any trend change, anything like that as things move along?
It's a hard nut to crack, only because like we got 70 years of Spider-Man, 70 years of Captain America. You know, people have that image or that trope in their mind, so they don't want another Spider-Man. They don't want another Captain America. If they got to choose between buying the next or the new one, they're going to stick with the old one. So the indie comic books that I've seen that are the most successful that's hitting shops are the ones that aren't so much superhero books, but what Bradley, our CEO, refers to as slice of life books. Books like The Blood, Skull, and Chromes, which is a story of a motorcycle. If you ever watch Sons of Anarchy, then you'll love Blood, Skull, and Chromes. Motorcycle gang versus the Mexican drug cartel.
Nice.
It is, it has that hint of realism. The title Duplicate by Carla Nappy. Because of what we are going through now in terms of the pandemic, Carla's book is very timely because it's set in the future, but in that future, a pandemic strikes, and that pandemic affects the internal organs. Also in that future, organ transplant is illegal. So there's a company that devises a way to manufacture organs.
Yeah. Great.
If you get one of these, the whole gist of it is the scientist who has developed this way of manufacturing organs. He has a cult after him. He has a company whom he was working for after him. It is a suspense thriller, but the whole relevancy of the pandemic that happens that affects the organs and us currently going through this pandemic. It's that slice of life thing, as Bradley says.
Yeah, we said it many times in the show, probably driving everybody crazy, but I've said right now people want to respond to stories where people were normal people, but they were thrusted into an extraordinary circumstance, because we all did that over the past 18 months, 2 years, whatever. And I think right now those stories resonate more with people than to your point, the traditional superhero story saving the world. How many more times can we save the world, right? So that kind of
That's
thing.
right.
Yeah.
And I think that's why shows like The Boys was such a popular show, because it showed the heroes in a totally different light. Jupiter's Legacy, popular because it showed heroes in a totally different light, and this is what people want to see, because they've seen the goodness of Superman. They've seen the goodness of Superman. Now they want to see the evilness of what's his name from The Boys,
Oh,
Captain Freedom, Homelander.
Homelander,
yeah. They want to see the evilness of Homelander, because you really, and even though DC has tried it over and over again, you really can't make Superman bad. I mean, you just can't do it. You can't. You just can't do it.
Give him a goatee or something like they used to do on Star Trek, right? Give him a goatee.
Yeah, that was the funniest thing. Like Spock sporting the goatee. Like, I like bad Spock, man. He looks cool.
He needs his own spin-off. That's what he needs. Yeah, he needs
boy.
Oh, but you're right that everyone wants to see the hero from the different angle now, like Invincible, right? I never read the comic series. I didn't even know about it. I didn't even know Kirkman did it. I didn't know any of that. I watched the Amazon show, and because people were like, you gotta watch it, and then I'm watching the first episode. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good, but it's a superhero show, and then all of a sudden, the ending of episode 1, I was like, "Oh shit!"
Yes.
Okay.
And then the thing about that is, the comic was just as bloody.
Yeah.
The show mirrored the comic in that bloodiness, that goriness. That's how the comic was. So that especially made the show a good show, because oftentimes you complain how shows don't stick with the source material. Well, they stuck with the source material on Invincible. like they lifted stuff right off the page and animated it.
It's awesome. Yeah. But that's just that perfect example, though. I mean, it's those are the superhero shows getting the attention right now. I mean, sure, the Marvel movies are always going to get attention, but people were obsessed with the boys, obsessed with Invincible, and it's just a different angle. But how many, like I don't know about you, but I mean I would love to do a superhero story if it was original, but it's everything's been done, like what
Exactly.
can you do?
And not to harp on DC or anything, but they were so intent on trying to find that formula, find that thing, that we had Batman having sex on the roof. You know what I mean? Because they're trying to get that, inject that, what they would consider that realism into the character, but it just doesn't work. I mean, like Batman doesn't kill. I don't care how bad he is. I don't care I don't care what plans, what devices. I don't care what. Batman doesn't kill. So if you make Batman,
he doesn't kill anymore. They changed it because he used to kill.
Well, the point I'm making is when you make him a killer, it's like that's not Batman anymore. That's the Punisher.
Yeah.
So you have to keep Batman as Batman, or else he's going to cross into somebody else.
Yep.
Yep. So we hit the hour and a half mark, Marcus. We did it that quickly. I don't know if you want to keep going or if you want to wrap. That's fine too, brother. So whatever you want to do.
We are only picking up steam.
I see. I think I can hang out for a little while longer. Let's keep it going, man.
All right, we can do that.
Got some water. I'm good to go.
All right. If you need to use the restroom, feel free. That's common on this show. So this is a long format show, so we do that. So that's all good.
I got my skull beer here, so it's all right.
Hey, I see you got your libation sitting there.
Is that a homebrew, Rogerio, or is that you still making yours, or did you?
No. This is just it's a German beer, Spaten.
Okay.
Never heard of that.
It means shovel. I don't know who can name a beer like that.
I think they just made that up. I don't think it means shovel, sir.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's a shovel here. I'll show you.
Yeah.
All right.
Could mean anything. It's like when people get those, Chinese logos tattooed on them. Like, oh, it means strong. And it means something totally different.
Yeah. Right. I don't mind.
If it's an authentic German beer, and I know this from being in Germany, if it's an authentic German beer, it's stronger than liquor. The thing is probably 30 or 40 proof.
Oh boy, I had some stuff in Austria, man. The name on the pull tap was like this long, right? It had more vowels in there than any word should. I had 2 pints of that, and my buddy's like, "You blacked out." Like, we're getting on the train. He's like, "You were swearing at the conductor and like throwing your stuff." I'm like, "That's not me, man." And like, it's like total. I'm like 2 pints, and I'm a big dude. I'm 6'3", 240. So I mean, that thing just knocked me on my ass. So to your point, man, you're absolutely right. It's like moonshine or something, drinking their beers. It's wild. So you're on for a ride.
Yeah.
Well, it's like before, and I mentioned how once upon a time I was in the Air Force and stationed over in Germany, but we traveled over to Amsterdam, and I actually got a chance to go to the Heineken brewery. And I have drank Heineken right out the tap. And I'm going to tell you, it was like drinking moonshine. It was like drinking a straight shot of Jack Daniels. That stuff was so strong. And then it's like coming back over to the States. And the beer coming off the tap, it was something like 24.
Oh, my God.
24, 20, between 20 and 24% alcohol. Like,
wow.
It was strong as I don't know what. And then they come back over to the States and then buy Heineken and you see like 7% alcohol. And you're like, man, this watered down swill.
It's regulated. Yeah, it's all regulated. I worked at a homebrew shop for a period of time, and all that stuff's regulated out. So if you get over like 12%, it becomes classified as like a dessert wine. Things like that. So it's really interesting when you get too high. But yeah, there's regulation on that. So you get outside the United States and our FDA laws and things, they can go just do whatever the hell they want. So they just crank that thing right up. So
Oh yeah. And like you said, man, all it takes is a pint or two. and
Yeah.
you
I mean,
are out.
You're on a journey. You're going somewhere. Back of a paddy wagon if you're not careful, apparently. Allegedly.
Well,
Oh.
I wanted to. You mentioned you were in the Air Force. Thank you for your service. But I want to throw that in there. I try to do that when I can. So.
Well, thank you. I was fortunate enough to serve during peacetime, but being stationed overseas and doing what I did, we had exciting moments. I worked in the nuclear weapons storage area there at Ramstein Air Force Base, and we had this one post that was called Eagle Eye, where it overlooked this huge section of the fence, and you're instructed that anytime you see any movement, you have to alert someone. So we had a new guy up there, and he saw some movement in the tree line, and he alerted the whole base. I mean, the entire base. Ramstein is the size of a small country. It's huge. The entire base. And then it turns out it was like a rabbit.
That's horrifying.
Yeah. Now I'll tell you what's hard is going back to Germany. The deer are very, very small in Germany. So you see this thing walking and you think it's like a wolf and it's actually a deer. But then you see this massive thing walking and you think it's a deer and it's like a wolf.
Oh man. Yeah. It's like Joel getting attacked by possums live on the show. It's
yeah, I'm out in the country, Marcus, so there's all kinds of creatures. I'm usually out on my porch, but it's getting too cold now, and then there's just a screen behind me normally, and there's all kinds of things come up just during the show, so you never know it's gonna come through the screen. And John wants to pay somebody to come and sneak up behind me on the screen and like look in the window or something to turn the show.
That's all I want in life.
Yeah. Now you got to wait till next spring when it warms up again.
We have snakes here in Brazil. Snakes, they are creepy, and they are terrible. They can just sneak in and you can see them. But you guys in America, you have bears. Fuck, this is terrible. Because when a bear gets you, there's no fucking way you can get away from them. Because so fucking big, and they like crunching people with their teeth.
Yeah, just come down. The paws are like that. It's huge, like a skillet.
When I think about Joel lives in the woods. So, God, that's horror for me. That's pure horror.
Well, I'm here in Florida.
Story.
Yeah, you got alligators and stuff. Yeah,
jaguars. Yeah,
alligator. They just found an alligator in Tampa. We were just talking about Tampa, so it's funny. Just talking about Tampa, but a woman was attacked by a gator, and a guy who witnessed this was like, "Yeah, man, that thing was probably about 6 feet long, man, 6-7 feet long." So they sent the wildlife people in there to get it. The freaking gator was 11 feet long. 11 feet long. And we're talking about in a residential area there in Tampa Bay.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Like, what the hell? 11 feet long.
That's like Lake Placid, like length right there. Like the movie Lake Placid.
Lake Placid. I passed through Lake Placid a couple of times. And yeah, it's there. Yeah, that lake, it is. You going through it, if you've ever seen the movie, just going through the town, all of a sudden you get like goosebumps, like Lake Placid, because that was one big ass gator.
Yeah,
that was a big ass gator. And we talk about we talked earlier about comedy and horror. I think that movie successfully pulled it off.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, that definitely did.
Because the comedic elements in there, the comedic scenes in there, they were keepers, man.
If you're gonna
And
have
it
a if
wasn't
you're
like,
gonna have a creature feature, it's got to have some humor in it. I feel like you can't take it too serious, you know. But
exactly.
yeah.
Armageddon was very serious, John.
Oh, jeez. Here we go.
How dare you?
Now, stay away, stay away.
Joel watched a movie called Lamageddon on Amazon and Amazon Prime, and he's been forcing it down our throats ever since.
You will watch it. You will.
Llamageddon.
It's a llama from outer
Yeah,
space
right,
that has laser vision. I think.
Yeah. And it had,
You
they were
know,
working on a sequel. They were working on the sequel. Was Alpacalypse? So it was the sequel.
if you smoke pot, this would be perfect for you.
Allegedly,
You know,
I wouldn't know, sir.
Make sure you have loads of it. Make sure you have loads of it.
Oh man. Speaking of alligators, I don't know. Has anyone else eaten alligator meat before besides myself?
Yes,
No.
I've eaten everything, sir. You're talking to me, of course. Yeah, you could get it.
I ate a turtle.
Really?
I hadn't had gator, but I've had shark.
Okay.
Yeah, shark's good too. Yeah,
Shark.
shark.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like if I had never tried alligator, and I'm an adult now, like if someone asked me to try it now for the first time, I'd probably say screw off. But like when we went to Florida, I ordered it at a seafood restaurant. I got gator nuggets, and I remember liking them. So I don't know. I mean, I haven't had it since, but yeah.
Everything's chicken, right? It's all chicken. That's what
Exactly.
it all tastes like.
Everything tastes like chicken.
I didn't like the taste of the shark. I just ate it just for the sake of revenge, you know, like they did for my pickles.
I had whale up in,
this.
I had whale up in Iceland. You know, they said that they kill them for scientific purposes. So you're eating whale, which are endangered. So I did have some whale in Iceland, but it's much more like a steak, I guess, which makes sense because it's kind of a mammal, I guess, more than a fish.
Huh.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, I'm that weird foods guy. I could totally be that, like Anthony Bourdain traveling around eating the weird shit around the world. That's me. I could totally do that. So.
This is why I want to go to India to taste those kinds of insects and everything.
Oh, dude, you got to drink the blood of the cobra if you go to India.
No, I wouldn't mind.
I'm good. I'm not touching that.
I wouldn't mind. Like as long as I have some drinks beforehand, you know, like I get very courageous when I drink. Which is
I would
liquid courage.
I don't think I would.
Liquid courage, the bane of our existence.
That's me.
I don't even think if I was blackout drunk, I don't think I'd eat a bug. I don't think. I think my
it's not bad.
Subconscious would still tell me no.
It's not bad. You could handle
not
it.
even a worm out the bottle of tequila.
I mean, maybe that, but I don't know.
He would pass out before.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, this is the type of tangent we go on here when we get towards the 2-hour mark. So,
we go random. Like if you want to talk about your personal life, you know, how you felt when you were dumped for the first time. It's all right. It's all out.
It was a real horror story. That was a real horror story.
That's horror. Yeah, that's horror. It's pure horror. Like when you were just like a groundless, and you don't know where else to go, and your friends think you look like shit, and then don't help you at all. You know, that's a good time to like reevaluate your whole life and maybe go into horror.
Yeah, maybe go into horror. Like I'm mad at the world now, so let me just come up with some devious alien creature that's gonna come down and infiltrate my girlfriend's family and slaughter everybody for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Oh, you know, like I used to say, if you are right with the way things are now, that means that you're crazy. Yeah, nobody's all right. And it's okay.
I think really, in order to be an effective horror writer, you had to have been or lived a scary childhood. Like everything was scary around the corner. You went to bed and pulled the covers all the way over your head so the creatures wouldn't get you. Or you slept with a cross under your pillow. Or, you know, you kept like a butter knife from the kitchen somewhere under the covers with you in case the monster came, and you're gonna try to defend yourself. And you're always mad when you wake up in the morning because your mom comes in the middle of the night and takes a knife out the bed. You're like, and the creature got me. Yeah. But I think it's that fear that really helps drive the horror writer into writing good stories.
Absolutely.
Because if you aren't afraid of it, go ahead.
Marcus, do you experience at all any nightmares from time to time, or something rare? Sometimes you write something and you go to bed and that comes to life. Does it ever happen to you?
Now, I did have an experience where I was writing a murder mystery set in Africa. And when I went to bed that night, I was dreaming that I was in the middle of an elephant stampede, and I was on the ground and I couldn't get up, and the elephants were coming closer and closer. I mean, I was stuck. I could not get up, but I woke up before I got crushed.
Look at you.
Other than that, I dream about a lot of flying.
Yeah.
See, you all missed that. You know what the flying dreams signify, right?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Joel, John, you all don't know what flying dreams signify?
I could pontificate on it, but if I get it.
It signifies sex.
There you go.
The lack of
I skipped the flying part. I guess I'm more at the airport getting my luggage. I'm going back to the car. The flight is over for me at this point.
He is married. He has 3 kids. So
I happen to have a degree in psychology. So yeah, one of the things that our buddy Sigmund Freud formulated was that when you dream about flying, you actually are dreaming about sex.
No kidding.
So, I fly everywhere.
I just thought I was a superhero in my dreams. Now I got to tell my wife something. Yeah.
That's why you got all them kids. Like,
oh man, when I have a scary dream, which I mean, as an adult, it's not really scary anymore. But when I have any sort of like nightmare, I actually look forward to it now because I look for story ideas. If I wake up, I'm like, yes. But it doesn't happen enough. Most of my dreams are stupid. I
really think I read too much horror, read and watch too much to actually dream about it.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Because I've always been a fan of shows like The Twilight Zone. I've seen every episode of Twilight Zone. I've seen every episode of The Outer Limits. 2 of my favorite shows. Ray Bradbury Theater. I watch Ray Bradbury Theater.
Nice.
Why? Because that's a suspense and thriller. Because I watch so much stuff like that. Then when I go to sleep, it's just sleep.
Yeah.
That's great. Twilight Zone is a great show, but what's your take on the Twilight trilogy with those kind of shiny vampires? Do you label those as horror, or do they have a genre of their own?
No.
I have never watched them. I have never watched them. I have a niece who told me about the story. Told me about the stories. Told me about what all the movies were about. And even as she describes the movies to me, I have no interest in watching the movie.
That'll give you nightmares, just her talking about it. Probably if you need to get some.
I'm like, come on, I want to see different things done with vampires and werewolves, but not that.
No.
I don't want to see the teenage love story of, you got a 17-year-old, 100-year-old vampire. I don't want to see that. Yeah, that's not a love story. That's a pedophile story. I don't care. It's a vampire stuck in a teen body. You know what I mean?
Let me tell you, Marcus, your niece must be very good at portraying that to you, but she can never be as bad as the real thing. You have to try it. You gotta try it yourself.
I was lost, like she was talking about, and I don't know, one of the parts, part 2, part 3, one of them, where the vampire imprints himself on somebody, and I'm like, what the hell is that? But the only imprinting I know a feral animal to do is like he'll pee on you to mark his territory. So did the animal pee on the person? Is that what happened? Otherwise that's stupid. Like, come on.
That film is the main element for me to tell people that don't ever give up, because even if you suck, you can succeed.
That's right.
Even if you suck and keep doing it, and you're gonna hit it big. It doesn't have to. You don't have to be good. You have to be consistent. Even if it's consistent shit, doesn't matter.
That's the thing. It is no such thing as bad horror. No such thing as bad horror. It might be a little off, but someone out there loves it. It may be a total ripoff. You have Nightmare on Elm Street and Nightmare on Pecan Street. Total ripoff, and people are gonna love Nightmare on Pecan Street. And like, wow, did you see the guy Teddy that had the glove? Total ripoff. But we just don't know. Like we judge ourselves as good tasting people, but we are not. We are like our taste serves to ourselves, not to the main public, because they decide for themselves. So I do never belittle anybody, because there's so many that I have belittled before, and they are so much higher than I am, and I don't judge. Well, I'll tell you another reason why I had watched Twilight, because I watched Once Bitten back in the day, and I was not going through that crap again. I don't want to see a vampire love story. I don't want to see a vampire love story. Okay? No. I want to see the vampire that loves it. Yeah.
Well, this is a great point for me to interject Lost Boys, though, Marcus, right? Come on, Lost Boys, bro. Right.
No, Lost Boys. Now, to me, the originality about Lost Boys was just the whole punk rocker type concept, because up until that point, you had, of course, you see vampires who were once a rocker or who were once a punk. Now they're vampires, but you didn't see like punk vampires. You know what I mean? You didn't see the way these vampires were portrayed. You just didn't see that. And that's what made Lost Boys a classic. Same thing with Fright Night. Fright Night was so good because
I love that one. Yeah.
Because of how the characters were actually portrayed. Because you've seen the characters before. You've seen similar characters, but it was the actual portrayal of it. Like, we knew Dracula couldn't go, a vampire cannot go in a residence until he's invited. But to see how that played out in Fright Night, like he never went in the house until the end when he was invited in. He was like, because he's a vampire, you can't enter unless he's invited in. Same thing with Lost Boys. It's like, the whole reason you come in because you was invited in. They couldn't come in before, but once you invited them in, you just unleashed hell on you boys.
I wanted to get Timmy Capello from the saxophone scene in Lost Boys to come on the show, and John thought I was crazy, and I'm like, bro, he was the Tina Turner saxophone player. The guy's awesome. Like, why would you? Right? I mean, the stories that guy could tell. Christ.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That scene had no
definitely.
point in that movie whatsoever. Just to have him up there playing "I Still Believe," blowing his saxophone in Lost Boys, like, bro.
All I said when Joel told me to try to get that guy on, I was like, man, what are we going to talk to him for an hour and a half about? Like,
Oh, I'd find all kinds of things, sir.
He would probably have some stories. He would probably have some stories for you.
Oh, I bet. Right. Touring with Tina Turner, man, that's got to be amazing. Just what is that like? Just go.
Oh yeah. Now that is part horror, part comedy. So, talking about a slice of life.
We try to bridge all genres here.
That's like I have a brother-in-law who actually at one point drove a bus, and he drove a bus for like Prince.
Nice.
Prince in the Revolution. So you can imagine stories that can be told.
Right.
The stories that he could tell. And for someone with a little warped sense of humor, it definitely can make that horrific. I laugh at Dave Chappelle when he did his little Prince thing because like Prince playing basketball. Prince
Y'all want some pancakes?
Basketball. Yeah, you saw that. Like that. And it's things like that even with horror that I try to do with horror. In Mississippi Zombie 3 rather, Mississippi Zombie 3, it'll be 3 and 4. I have a story that's going in called Zombie Heist. In the middle of the zombie apocalypse, some guys get together and try to rob a bank.
That's a good idea.
So, and the whole thing is the whole basis of the story is the zombies, of course, but the bank robbery, the bank heist in the apocalypse. How do you pull that off? What do you do? What kind of planning? How do you plan for that?
Because do they know there's a zombie apocalypse, or is it just something that breaks out? Okay.
They plan for it. They have a strategy to try to get things working in their favor, and because not only do you have the zombies there, but because of the area in Mississippi, and this is something I really didn't get a chance to mention. The whole title of the book, Mississippi Zombie, is because the zombie apocalypse happens in the state of Mississippi and nowhere else. So from Jackson all the way to the islands off the coast, you got zombieism occurring.
I've been to Hattiesburg, and I'm pretty sure I ran into some zombies when I was in Hattiesburg. So,
I'm gonna circle back around to some of the ghost stories in Mississippi, but they know the zombies are there, but they have a plan that they're enacting in order to try to get the zombies away from the area that the bank they want to rob. Plus, because of where it is and what it's supposed to be, you got National Guardsmen there who are actually protecting some military assets that are deemed important that they want to keep zombies away from. So it is a action horror thriller. But circling back around to the ghost stories of Mississippi, when I was doing my research for Mississippi Zombie, I found out all kind of crazy haunted stories of Mississippi. Like Mississippi is a haunted place.
Yeah.
From the ghost dog at the Biloxi train station lures children off. The disappearing island off the coast. The way the story goes, island of a big landmass appeared. They went and built the casino there. The grand opening of the casino night, the grand opening night came, and the island disappeared along with the casino.
That's wild.
Of course, because of the different plantations, you have all kind of ghost stories that run the gamut through the plantation circuit. What I did with my Horn Island Trilogy story was it starts off at a plantation called the Annabelle Plantation. And the Annabelle Plantation is haunted by the nanny of one of the kids there. She is said to walk the grounds of that plantation.
That's sounds
they're just creepy to begin with when you see them.
Yeah,
right? It's like
exactly.
the old Spanish moss. Like they just got a setting, right? It's big, it's old, it's gnarly, right? Just looks spooky to begin with. Yeah, ghost or no ghost, they just feel like they harbor some type of energy down there, right? So, yeah.
Marcus, on your script, are you worried about explaining how those zombies are generated? And are you worried about how to make sure that your readers are going to understand if that is feasible or in some kind of reality that could have been done or that could have happened? Are you worried about the feasibility of it? Or you don't care, like you just throw that and leave people to judge for themselves?
Well, for the Horn Island Trilogy, I actually, and not wanting to give away too much of the story, but there was the way the story goes. This family has been cursed, and they've been cursed to end up on Horn Island. So the reason for the curse was there was a member of the family who was involved in the slave trade, the ship captain, and the slaves rebelled, and they had an uprising on the ship, and he forced the slaves back down in the galley and set the ship on fire and burned the slaves alive in the ship. And the ship came to rest right outside of Horn Island. But there was a survivor from that, which happened to be a witch, and placed a curse on the family. So the zombies are actually generated from that. The zombies are the dead slaves that were on the ship that were burned to a crisp. So you got that touch of realism there. That's like, this actually could happen. Like, and if you're a person who believes in zombies, this actually could happen. These people actually could come back to life or come back from death as zombies.
Well, that happens too, right? With like voodoo and things. My father was a missionary in Jamaica. He lived there for 6 years, and he's seen people possessed like that and things. And they would people would think they're dead and coming back as zombies, and in their mind they believe all that stuff because they put the voodoo cursing in their mind and that belief. They think they're dead and resurrected and out of their head and being manipulated by these people. So he's seen that in the island. So
well, the thing about zombies is there are many different kinds, and this was something else that I found out in doing my research. In West Africa, the zombies actually aren't dead people. Instead, they're just people who've been placed in a trance, and they can be controlled by children.
And they look horrible.
Well, they have no look. No, they're regular people. It's just they're in a trance, and they're controlled by kids, and they consider that to be zombies. In South Africa, the zombies are regular, normal-looking people who are just entranced. And what they believe was these people, that witches cursed these people to make them work in the mines. So what happens is you had trains of workers that would be coming from the mines, and they refer to them as zombie trains because all these people look like they're in a trance coming from the mines. Wow. And that's how they felt like they would get the people to work in the mines, was entrancing them, and now they become zombies to work.
Sounds like a lot of people in corporate America, they're trans.
Nice storytelling there.
So we are most familiar with the zombies from the voodoo folklore, but zombieism it touches a lot of different cultures, and it's been around for a long time.
Do you not think that we are producing kind of real-time zombies right now with the advent of social media, people who are not interacting with each other, like all the time, just with very strong thumbs and not, aware of what's going on around. Do you not think that the big hit of zombies is because we are just relating the story of the zombies with the society that we are living now, producing kind of light or lighter zombies, and zombies that are not aware. Like no zombie is aware of their state. But do you not think that the big hit of the zombies is partially or mostly related to it?
Oh, I have yet to really see a connection between that. I, on the other hand, think it's because people have broken out of the tropes, the usual tropes, the stereotypical behavior that we've come to associate with zombies. Think about the movie World War Z.
Yeah.
Were those not the scariest zombies ever? I mean, think about it. They run normal speed. They're in some cases faster. Their movements are faster. They're aware enough to climb on each other to get over a wall. Jumping off the building to go after a helicopter. I mean, this is not your typical behavior from zombies. You're used to, the lumbering, or yeah. You think about 28 days later, or 28 days and 28 days. Think about the zombies that are portrayed there, because we're breaking out of those tropes, that stereotypical thing. I think that's really what makes it more exciting. That's really what makes it what is piquing people's interest. Like, my zombie doesn't have to be dead. My zombie can be entranced. My zombie doesn't have to be this slow walking, flesh decaying type of thing. My zombie could be like if Usain Bolt was turned into a zombie, then I got the fastest man alive that's going to be chasing me down, biting me.
Right.
And because we have shed the tropes and we've placed the zombieism on people like that, zombies that I think about a old title from Caliber, Dead World. The zombies in Dead World talk, they interact. They weren't that stereotypical trope. So because we have more and more of that, because we are experiencing the freedom to be creative and to be innovative with the zombies, and not just zombies, even with vampires and werewolves and things, that the scary creatures themselves, because we can be more innovative, it piques the interest more. Like we have seen traditional Dracula. We've seen the traditional Dracula. That's what made Lost Boys such a big hit, because these were not traditional vampires. This was not the black cape turned into a bad guy. These were the kids that were hanging out, listening to the music. They would, at one point, they seemed real cool because they were living life unhindered, unadulterated. They were the freedom that everybody wants, but then they're vampires.
I see your point, but when you say that, do you not think that maybe it's a bit controversial when you said earlier on that how many Spider-Man stories or Superman or Captain America can we have? It's not being controversial when you say I can be creative about zombies, and when it comes to Dracula or Frankenstein, but we are stuck here with the Marvel and the DC stuff. Do you draw a kind of a line between those two? when it comes to creativity. And speaking of that, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just embracing the controversial thing.
Not really, because as I mentioned before, we've come to associate certain and specific behaviors with our superheroes, and it's hard to break them from that. In order to get Superman to act different, they got Bizarro, totally different version of him, because Superman is just certain things Superman can't do. With Spider-Man, for example, Spider-Man represents this one ideal. So you can't have him do certain things because of what he represents, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So instead, you come up with Venom. You come up with the black suited Spider-Man. You come up with something that you have that is a viable vehicle where you can let that creativity grow, because it's just certain things that you can't do with these heroes that we have made and that we call iconic. You just can't do it, and that's our fault for placing these heroes on this pedestal where they can't get dirty and we can't knock them off of it. We can't do certain things, and that's our fault. And at the same time, we've come up with alternative things. Back in the early 2000s, Christopher Priest was writing Captain America, and he wrote this character called the Anti-Cap. And with the Anti-Cap, whereas Captain America is going in looking for the peaceful solution, Anti-Cap is like, okay, I'm just going to blow everybody up. Even with when Bucky Barnes became Captain America, what was his thing? He had a gun. Like, Captain America's got a gun. Because this is not Steve Rogers, this is Bucky Barnes, and the Bucky Barnes Cap has got this gun, couple of guns that he's, so we come up with different things like that so we can keep the purity of our iconic characters. So Superman can remain pure. We'll come up with any other type of version from any place else, any of the multi-universes, anything else, just so we can try to get a different take on them. But none of it's lasting because the original is just too powerful. That iconic Superman is just too powerful.
I would agree. I mean, and that's like the argument Roger is making there. I see that side of it too. But Peter Parker is Peter Parker, like you said. Like, it's one. The only way you can change that is by creating Venom or Miles Morales or some alternative to what Peter Parker is. Zombies are essentially a species, so you can do anything. It's a whole new world. You can interpret it however you want. So that's how I would view it. The other thing I wanted to make a point of, which was like 10 minutes back now, so it's irrelevant, but I still want to say it, is I want to see a zombie story with Usain Bolt. When you said that, I'm like, man, that's money right there.
I think that is scary. Not the zombie, but the fact that the zombie is the fastest man on earth. You know what I mean? Like,
Barry Allen becomes a zombie or something, right? Like,
I can slow walk away from Fat Albert, but Usain Bolt is gonna run me down.
Fat Albert zombie, man. That could be a cool angle, right?
Hey, it could be, man. It could be, and that's the beauty of the whole horror thing, is that when you add any character, any comic, when you add those horror elements in there, it changes it into something totally different, and yet you can still keep it the same. Like, if you made let's make Wonder Woman a vampire, if we made Wonder Woman a vampire, she's still gonna have that lasso of truth. She's still gonna have those bracelets. She's just gonna bite the shit out you and drink your blood.
Invisible jet flying around.
Yeah, she's flying around in an invisible jet looking for victims.
At least it's hot.
She won't be flying over water though, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
what the real question is since she is a zombie, will she be able to operate in her invisible jet in the daytime?
Right? Yeah. See, these are things.
Yeah.
It's invisible. So.
I don't think she uses the invisible jet anymore. It's been some time. Like she flies now.
I don't know. It's been so long since I don't focus on DC outside of Batman here and there. So it's hard for me. I don't know. I just remember the Justice League invisible jet when I was a kid.
The invisible jet, that's like a staple of Wonder Woman. It's not really Wonder Woman unless she has the invisible jet.
Yeah,
the artist was like, I don't want to draw this, so it's going to
draw Sky.
Invisible. Yeah, it's invisible.
Draw Sky and her in a sitting position like this.
I don't know how to draw a jet, so it's invisible from now on.
I think that's the way they did it on Super Friends, right? They just drew her in a sitting position.
Yep.
Like an outline of a jet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a hash mark, right?
Speaking of Super Friends, they were the Super Twins. I don't know what happened to them. Any news? Any comments on them? I don't think so.
I haven't seen anything.
Because that was a bit too much, and the Super Jet was too much as well, so they took it off. Yeah, I'm not bullshitting you. No, that's I read this. I still do. I don't like that character, that much. But sometimes I just buy it and I go to read. Oh, what happened? Whatever happened to the Super Jet? No, she flies now. They decided that is more reasonable that someone defies the laws of the gravity than the laws of the light, because like vision is about interpreting the light. So she doesn't have a invisible jet.
Does she fly or does she just jump really far like Hulk style?
No.
Like Hulk can just jump, but it looks like he's flying.
She flies Superman style. But
really?
Sometimes, it's been more than 20 years she's been doing that. Yeah. You didn't notice that. Shame on you, John.
I'm just sorry, behind in DC, man.
I follow it.
But
I have one Wonder Woman comic book. It's issue 206, which is the first appearance of Nubia on the cover. Other than that, no Wonder Woman here.
I heard the Wonder Woman Dead Earth graphic novel was fantastic. They were saying it was like book of 2020 or something, but I like to try to buy it locally. I mean, I can get it on Amazon or whatever, but my local shops just never had it, so I haven't bought it because I try to support those guys.
But guys, I was wondering, the thing with superhero stuff is that transport is always a problem. Like Daredevil, Spider-Man, they couldn't act somewhere else. Like they have to live in big cities, because if you take the buildings down, they are fucked. Captain America used to drive a motorbike, all right, but like how long can he drive a motorbike? Sometimes he has to travel cities and stuff. He has to sleep, and the authors, they have to figure out a way to move those characters. And all right, let's give them the ability to fly. All right. John Byrne was the first guy who tried to explain how Superman could fly. That was fantastic, because he was trying to bring science into the comics. But we have to suspend our judgment and our lack of knowledge on that matter, just to enjoy ourselves. And all right, I don't want to think too much about it. let's give Superman the ability to fly anywhere. Let's have the ability to forgive Spider-Man to be in the countryside, things like that. And the transport has been a big issue to the capes, if you know what I mean. Like, we don't have a problem in that ball.
Well, if you notice, the first comics, they all took place in major cities, or if it was either a real city like New York or a made-up city like Metropolis. But they're always in the bigger cities. And to your point, as far as like with Daredevil and Spider-Man, because they use the tall buildings to swing around on, you wouldn't find them at a spot here in Florida. They wouldn't be in Orlando where the tallest building is 4 stories because there's nothing to swing from. And that was actually coming up. One of the reasons why I was really not into a lot of the superhero books, because they all took place in areas that didn't look like where I stayed at. I'm originally from a small town. The stories that were geared toward people who lived in cities. They weren't geared toward small town folks. We were overlooked. So even as the years moved on, going in the 80s and going into the 90s, some of the comic books that were coming out were more spread out as far as areas in the country. You started seeing stuff happening in states that you didn't see before, but they were still not geared towards small town people. But a genre like horror takes place the best, and we said this, in small towns, in rural areas. Yeah, so that's another reason why I was attracted to horror, because it seems like some of the scariest stories took place on Old Man Johnson's farm. You know what I mean? Some of the scariest stories took place in these little small towns that Stephen King talks about all up and down Maine and New Hampshire and all these other places. You know, it's always this small town that has the eeriest of secrets, that has the deadliest of people living there, that type of thing. So the transition from superhero to horror to me was easy, because I can relate more to horror being in a small town, being from a small town setting, growing up in a rural area.
It makes so much sense. Yeah.
You need silence to make things scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. You can't. I was thinking when we were talking about Spider-Man being in like a town without skyscrapers, like you couldn't, like, you have Spawn Gunslinger, you couldn't have Spider-Man Gunslinger, because what's he gonna I just pictured him out in the Wild West, like what's he gonna do? Like he's gonna have to be on the ground, like, running to the woods to use the trees to like sling off, like Tarzan or something, like,
swinging on cactus or something.
I don't know.
And when you think about it, he really wouldn't. He couldn't be anywhere else but where he is in New York. Spider-Man would not work like in Atlanta even. Spider-Man is not going to work. It's just not going to work in the smaller places. He has to be in that large city with those tall buildings and whatnot in order for him to be an effective character.
But I mean, that's honestly, I was just gonna say, do a story arc there. That would be original. Have him go somewhere where his web's pretty much taken away from him. Like, he can't.
Put him in the Rockies or something, right? Put him in Colorado and see what he does or something. Yeah.
Different. I have a cousin who actually collected Spider-Man back in the day. He used to collect. They ran 5 different Spider-Man titles at one time. and he was collecting them all. The Web of Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man,
And Spider-Man.
and Spider. He collected all 5 of those titles, and I can remember one of the issues, one of the storylines. Spider-Man goes to some place like Nevada or Texas or some place like that, where he can't swing from buildings or anything like that because there's no tall buildings there.
Yeah.
And then, like, as soon as he makes his appearance, everybody's like, "Okay, where's Peter Parker?" Because the city he's he's not in a city of 8 million people now. He's only in a city of a few thousand people. And they see, okay, well, this guy was here, and now Spider-Man is here. This guy is Spider-Man.
Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah.
I remember reading that storyline, and he was like, I gotta solve this crime, whatever was happening. I gotta do it as Peter Parker. So Peter Parker doesn't get exposed as being Spider-Man.
That's great. I didn't know that storyline. That's very interesting to me. I would love to read that. Like, you think about that, right? It's like, yeah, there's a new guy in town, Peter Parker. Oh, Spider-Man's here now too. Yeah, cool.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's like, you cannot overlook it. Like, we just went the last 15 years with no Spider-Man. Peter Parker comes in town, and we got Spider-Man. Peter Parker is Spider-Man. It's like, it can't be anybody else.
Yeah, you're messing with people's intelligence if you don't, acknowledge that. So
yeah, you have to. Even the smallest kid is gonna be like, "That's Spider-Man. You ain't fooling nobody."
No, he puts on glasses. He looks totally different, right? That's
we have to give that allowance to Bruce Wayne as well. We have to give that allowance to him, because a guy who is a playboy and is partying all the time, and he has that kind of physique as a bodybuilder, that doesn't match. That will never match.
I think the one that really takes the cake are the green guys, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, because they only got that little small eyepiece.
Yeah.
So at least Batman has got like half his face covered, but these guys only got like the one little eyepiece. So, like, how do you not know Oliver McQueen is Green Arrow when the hair, cheekbones, forehead, nose, all of that is the same? But hey, the eyes are covered, so it can't be him. Get out of here.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, Superman was even worse, though. Like he said, just put the glasses on, and that's it.
What were they saying? That they said that the lenses were... I think they said the lenses were from Krypton, and that they could do some type of psychological thing or like fooled humans' brains into thinking he was somebody else. They did some workaround, I think, with that. That's what
I heard. I think it was more like when he put the glasses on, he would change his posture, like droop his shoulders so they wouldn't be so broad and standing. He would, in the change of posture, to make himself look more vulnerable and weak, and then when you think about it in real life, the difference between a person who stands slumped over and the person who stands straight up, stands tall and broad, it is a actual physical difference in the stature of the person. Because if a person is slumped over and got his shoulders droop, and they're going to appear to be smaller than the person who's standing with their shoulders spread, standing tall and broad. So I remember back in the day, that was one of the reasons why people were fooled, because of the posture, the hair, the glasses, and then the way Clark Kent was written. Yeah, you just didn't believe that this clumsy guy was Superman. He just couldn't be Superman. And that was the funny thing with Spider-Man and Peter Parker. It's like because of everything that Spider-Man was, that Peter Parker wasn't. You just didn't think Peter Parker was Spider-Man because he was nerdy. You know, he was wimpy. Because that's the way he was portrayed. He didn't look like this statuesque, majestic person in this bright red suit swinging around New York. So it's a little psychology there, a little play with perception, but when it's done right, it can be done and it can be effective.
Yeah, they say good storytelling, the opposites is always a key thing, right? So you have, to your point, like a nerdy guy who's then very pulled together, very stoic, and then same thing, you got a, kind of a nerdy kid, right? And then he's a big super. So they always work in the juxtaposition between the two. Anytime you can have that, it builds for good storytelling. Even the way the characters are designed, the way things look, if there's some type of contrast, a complete 50-50 contrast, then it works out well. Telling the story.
But that's why they believed Flash Thompson was Spider-Man versus Peter Parker. Flash Thompson, the athlete, Peter Parker, the nerd.
Right.
So they believe Flash has got to be Spider-Man. Who's gonna believe Parker? I always did at least admire that characterization about Spider-Man because it didn't work for everybody, but for Peter Parker in particular, and in my opinion, for Clark Kent, it worked because their alter egos were so different than what they were. Clark Kent, Superman, that's such that difference. You just never saw Clark acting heroic. You just never saw Peter Parker acting heroic. And yet, that's what they did all the time in their alter egos.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Spider-Man was always my go-to. Anyways, I'm not trying to insult the guy. That was my go-to comic as a kid. But we're an hour past what we said. We said you had for time here. So
I'm sitting back here in my room, and I got the thumbs up that I was okay to go over. So that's how I ended up hanging a little longer than I originally said. Yeah, but we definitely at that time where I'm going to have to.
Yeah,
it's all good. That's why I brought it up. We appreciate the time. I don't know if you want to. You have a lot to plug. There's a lot of things going on right now with Second Sight. If there's anything that you want to make sure we touch on here before we go.
Well, just be on the lookout for the horror comic books that are coming out. Like I said, there's a total of 8 of them. Let's see if I can name them all. Silence by Evan Pazias. Forsaken. I think that's Sergio Rios. I hope I'm right. If not, I'm sorry. Silence, Forsaken, Ironhead, the Horn Island Trilogy, These Damn Kids, Arisian, Freak Show Kingdom, and also Athena by Larry Spike Gerald. Athena definitely, Athena sleeper hit. The story of a immortal female who's been banished to this island of monsters. She looks vampiric in nature, but she isn't a vampire. But she has she's got the pointed teeth, and she even drinks blood, but she's not a vampire.
Sounds like some girls definitely high school.
Definitely a sleeper hit. The title Silence and Forsaken actually sold out on the retail levels. Both of those were spotlight on books and previews, and both of them were actually designated key collectors.
Wow.
So yeah,
I'm friends with Evan on Facebook now. I've seen it. I've seen his stuff for Silence. It looks awesome. So.
Oh yeah, Silence is one of those stories where once you start reading the book, you become riveted. You can relate to this character so much, and you start cheering this character on, even as he starts his bloody spree. And like, he'll be okay. He's gonna come back to normal. He's gonna come back to normal. Oh, he killed somebody else. No, he's gonna come back. I know this dude. I know he's gonna be okay. It's one of those type characters. But the book, all of the books are good, and that's the thing about being in the position that I'm in and getting a chance to look at all these books that are submitted. I know the stuff that's down the line, even with the horror stuff that's coming out. Chuck Satterley and Monsters in Midway, which is I think hits previews next month. That's going to be a big book. We've got a title, Rockabilly Monsters. That's a big title. And
Rockabilly Monsters.
Rockabilly Monsters. That's right.
That sounds good. Yeah. I would love to see that.
And it falls right into the horror genre. It's not something that's gory. It's not something that's real heavy, and yet it takes the monsters from back in the day, the monsters of lore, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Mummy, Dracula, and it has them and their adventures. So it's just something about horror that we like horror. We try to hit every genre, try to touch on everything that we can think of, from the supernatural to straight up monster stuff to the psychological. So, we feel like we do horror pretty well.
You're speaking our language. That's what we live for at Livid. So, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Awesome.
Just before we go, can you tell us what's the best part of your job? Is it when you're planning, when you're just scribbling, or when you see your works in the hand of the reader? What's the part that delights you the most?
It is the actual production. Actually, when I'm writing the script, to me, that's the best part, because I sit there and say to myself, oh, this is going to be good. Oh, I can't wait for somebody to read this. And I'm the type of person, my motivation is intrinsic. It comes from the inside. And because I'm intrinsically motivated, self-speak is important. Telling myself, this is going to be the best script that you've ever written. This is going to be one of the best panels that you've ever described. This book is going to be 1 million copies seller. And then me working in that manner, because I've hyped myself up and I got myself believing that indeed I'm getting ready to write the story of the century, or indeed I'm getting ready to do a book that once it gets in the hands of people, they're going to love it. So it's that production part, because the book, the finished product, is only as good as the effort that you put into it. So I know I'm giving 100% effort. I'm putting it all in. I'm laying on the line, and when I'm finished, I know it's a good book because I've laid it all on the line, because I put 100% effort into it.
That's great.
Definitely believe
great.
that, and people realize that too when they look at it. They want something that's got a lot of passion, energy, and commitment and effort. We always talk about that here. That's a big thing behind all the projects. Is if you have that, you'll be successful.
Oh, definitely, and that's the advice when I talk with people and they talk about doing comic books, and yes, the hopes and aspiration of comic book creators to get a big deal and have big distribution going out. But as a creator, my hope and aspiration is that I put together the best book ever, and then everything else take care of itself. And I tell guys, look, don't worry about all that distribution and all other stuff. Focus on putting together the best book that you possibly could. Focus on writing the best script that you possibly could write. And then everything else will fall in line.
Yep, quality always sells. That's what we always say. So that's it. If you bring quality
and passion, because when you give 100%, it's because you love that bitch.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
it. Yeah. Thank you very much for being here with us tonight, Marcus. You know, it was a blast, and we are very.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I hope you all invite me back.
Oh, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah, it sounds like you got enough projects for us to keep going. So we got enough things we can certainly talk with you about. So that's great. Yeah, man. Yeah, wish you the best of luck. Whatever we can do to help out. You know, we're here about giving back. So let us know what we can do, and we're here for you too. So happy to help you.
I sure will. I sure will.
All right, buddy. Well, we appreciate your time tonight, and we'll definitely have you back. We got a lot of things going on. The next show, we're going to take a little bit of a break, about a week and a half. But we'll be back with we're doing like a big indie showcase, I guess, our first one ever. We have like 4 different creators on. I don't even know all their names and titles. There's so many of them, but it's going to be fun. So it's going to be our biggest show. There'll be like 8 of us on screen here, so it's going to be a madhouse. Should be fun. All right.
Yeah, that's going to be cool.
Yeah, it should be a good time. So look forward to that. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe to all the social media things you normally do that algorithms block us out on. So if you can help with that, that's great. And we will catch you guys on that indie comic showcase in like a week and a half. So I hope everyone else out there continues to stay livid and have yourself a pleasant evening.